Welcome back. We're focusing on the tax changes that reared up in the budget. Our panel guests are Botha from BDO, Mia Hassan from the University of Johannesburg, and David Warneke from SAICA's National Tax Committee. Okay, so it's been quite controversial, this foreign employment income. Was there anything in this year's budget?
Yes, there was, Lee. And also they said that there was going to be a workshop, which I think everyone would welcome once again, because it was very controversial. So the idea is that if a South African goes abroad and earns foreign employment income, which under current legislation is all exempt provided you stay overseas for a certain number of days, from the 2021 tax year that's going to be taxed up above 1 million rand is going to be taxed in future. And there's a concern that it's going to be unaffordable because you're going to pay tax here and there on the same employment income. So the proposal now is that in calculating pay as you earn, the employers are going to be able to take into account foreign taxes suffered on that income, so it won't become totally unaffordable immediately anyway. No one will feel the pain.
Would that be fair?
It makes sense, I think, because it's almost like a double tax. Because we actually, you got a foreigner withholding tax from that end, and then you also got the South African Spain and pay as you earn from our side. So I think it's very logical. I think it's going to ease the burden again, but I still think it's something South African residents earning foreign income is not going to be happy about it. We know it's coming. It was legislated in the budget and in the tax laws for a couple of years, so they almost pre-warned us about this coming as well.
There'll be two unhappy parties to this, the foreign income earners and then the employers that's going to have to administer this. We don't have details on that yet, so they did say that they'll announce what it's going to entail. But the administrative burden on your HR and payroll functions in big corporates are definitely going to have to struggle through this again with system changes and the like.
I want to go on to small businesses, Marcus. So there was no change there, despite promoting this as a growth sector.
No change. No
change in the sliding scale rate, which is going up to 28%.
No, it was completely silent on small business.
There's nothing in the detail that I pick up as well.
But in the past, there have always been sort of talk and measures to reduce red tape and compliance. Nothing?
Nothing. I'm surprised about that, because I think, we're talking about tax simplification, and remember, I try and teach this complex law that we have, which is really difficult. And I think, a place to start with the simplification, if anything, if you want to start simplifying the tax rule, we should be starting there. We should look at small businesses and how to unblock it, make it easier for people to comply, make it simpler, make the rules simpler to read and implement so people can
Because if you're
comply.
a small business, you don't have time. I mean, you've got to spend your time productively and earn income instead of having to deal with all this red tape and tax compliance.
And the big thing for me there is the cost of compliance.
Yes.
We don't always realize how the magnitude or the quantum of internal cost of compliance. It costs a lot of money, whether you're a large corporate
and if you employ a tax
business.
consultant, you end up paying about 6,000 Rand a year. It's just intact. It's just pointless. Okay, so I want to ask you about the micro business. There is a turnover tax. It's about 3% of 750,000. How popular is that?
In my experience, I haven't dealt with any micro businesses. I actually can't comment and tell you if it's a contributor to the fiscus.
I mean, it's been there for quite a few years, and yet you don't hear.
We don't even teach that, to be honest. So it's like a syllabus they've got it removed.
That comes from a detailed reading of the budget review.
There's so many exclusions, it's very difficult to get into that regime. It really caters for absolutely tiny businesses, and then there are all sorts of restrictions and requirements.
They want to get their money's worth no matter what. Sin taxes. So, I mean, one expects them to go up, but what is a bit laughable, I think, is that I did an interview recently and we looked at the cigarette, the tax take on cigarettes, and they pointed out the study shows that the tax take actually reduces every time you increase the tax on cigarettes, yet each year they do this.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely a trade-off between upping the rates of excise on those on cigarettes and the illicit trade in cigarettes. So it makes that much more attractive to buy cigarettes.
Why do you think that they continue to push people into the illegal market, illegal cigarette market by doing this?
Well, I suppose the response was the special illicit unit that will specifically look at the illicit cigarette trade that was announced in the budget. So that will be the measure to circumvent the move from legal to illegal cigarettes and them still getting the increase in the sin tax.
Okay, so it was 12 cents on a can of beer, 22 cents a bottle of fine wine, and no increase on sorghum beer. Election year budget.
Political budget, yes.
Tax morality and willingness to pay. Do you think it's gone downhill?
I think it has gone downhill. I mean, we see talk of a tax revolt. There's been a lot of talk about that. I don't think that that's going to practically get off the ground in any meaningful way. But still, you know, I think that shows that people have had enough of, you know, especially corruption and so forth, and that they, you know, feel that they don't want to pay. And of course we don't condone that sort of behavior in any way, shape or form, but I mean it's out there.
But in terms of international tax comparatives, our maximum marginal for individuals is 45%. How does that compare internationally? Are we hard done by?
We're not. There are countries that...
countries got 60%. Yeah, I think
What,
Sweden is up
Venezuela?
to... it's Sweden. I
So
think Sweden is
on a
60.
comparative basis, there's argument for us to pay more. But if you take everything else into consideration, like I think the last time I had a look, we had about 17 or 19 different tax types, which includes all the different levies and taxes. So if you add all of those up, then we're probably well up there in the range of what other countries pay in terms of their...
Just to add to that, so obviously they monitor the tax gap, the tax to GDP ratio, which is the value that you can extract from the maximum that you can take from an individual. And on that point, we are sitting at about 26%, which is the said maximum, if you want to call it. So I think it's pretty in line. I don't think it's out of line. And
although I think if you look at our personal tax to GDP ratio, I've seen figures of around 10%, which is really high by comparison with a whole host of countries, and very high for a developing country.
Okay,
But
quick
that
comments
brings us
from
to
you.
the tax base, I guess, the size of the tax base.
Yeah.
The minister mentioned that they're looking at an export tax on scrap metal. Where does that come from?
I think it's just trying to make sure that that kind of the material doesn't actually exit the country. So it's almost to make sure that the manufacturing environment in scrap metals retains and is all sitting here in SA. Because the moment we take those kind of things out, what's going to happen is that we have lost to the tax net, if you want to call it. So we've got zero rating on exports itself. But I think on scrap metal, what you want to do is actually make sure it stays here.
Stays in the border.
The state of SARS. Out of 10, how do you think SARS is running? What level is running at right now?
We have to commend the acting commissioner on the job that he has done to date since he's taken over. He's been very focused on driving process and compliance within the organization so that everyone follows the process if they're going to do a refund or whatever else that they're looking at. But we are far behind other countries in terms of the enhancements, the advancements that they've made in their tax administration. And I was actually hoping in this budget to have more explicit guidance or just something that's going to tell us exactly how we're going to fix SARS, because it's the heartbeat of the economy. And if we don't have effective and efficient tax administration, we're going to go nowhere.
Yeah, and the state of SARS definitely impacted on the collections. But they are bringing back this large business unit.
I'm
That'll
very
help.
happy to hear that, because when I worked there back in the day, it was certainly a potent area. It was something that worked. And I think it was a typical example of breaking down something that actually works.
Yeah.
Why did they ever stop it?
Well, now we're going into a state capture conversation, I think.
Okay.
But let me give you some
Ex-commissioner,
I can share some interesting statistics with you. 86% of registered corporate income tax entities did not file returns in the last year
And
of
they probably
assessment.
weren't followed up on.
And you're looking at 31% of registered PAYE taxpayers also didn't file their returns. And it's going to take us right back to SARS and what's happening there.
There's been a big loss of top-ranking personnel at SARS that, of course, is going to take a long time to fix. And and quite a lot to coax them back, I think, into an organisation where they had such a bad experience.
So the running of SAICA, would you say it's at a 5 or even below that?
I would go below
Be brave,
that.
gentlemen.
I think it's going to take another 7 years before it comes
7
back
years?
to what old SARS was actually. That's a number
So
that
long.
I'm thinking.
But
yes.
won't the new head, and he or she is to be announced next month, I think, they'll speed things up, won't it?
I think it will. You need to firm commitment. You need leadership from the top. I think I support what Marcus has said 100% because what the acting commissioner has done, he's engaged with the stakeholders. He's talking all the right things. He's admitting fault. He's saying, let's fix what's not working. Let's bring back large business center. Things that actually worked in the past. But I think the fact that we've gone so quickly, so fast backward, it's going to take time to come back.
It is going to take time. I think it's a step in the right direction. I think also the transfer pricing unit, which I understand is being rebuilt. It's a question of collecting efficiently all the money that SARS should be bringing.
Okay,
If I have
I'm
to
going to interrupt because I want your comment. So the minister said that they're going to review the tax regime for oil and gas activities this year. Was that prompted by the big gas find?
Precisely that, which was very exciting. I actually thought
Yes,
that they would
source
throw
of revenue.
considering it's an election budget, I actually thought that they would elaborate slightly more on that because that in a way gives us some hope.
Yeah, one imagines that must have had something to do with it, although the actual detail didn't mention much.
Very
It's
fuzzy.
very vague.
Yeah.
But
on
it
what's
is a
gonna happen.
PR point, apart from the environmental destruction, I guess. But it's also surprising that they didn't make more of it.
Interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because that could have a massive saving ultimately in the outflow of foreign exchange reserves.
And we
that
could all end up
probably only in
paying
7 years'
low
time,
individual
8
tax
years'
rates.
time. Hopefully.
One day.
Okay, quick comment from you. Is there too much reliance on individuals in the system?
It always has been,
And it
and
will
it still
continue.
is.
Yeah, we've got a very, very narrow base. It's always been a problem in South Africa of
So-
very small percentage of people pay a very
Yeah.
high percentage of the
and that
the
pool is
tax.
diminishing all the time.
Correct.
So
And
we
for-
get 40% of the tax collection. I think up to 38-40% comes from just individuals, and I think there's about 500,000 individuals that
Okay,
contribute.
just in 10
80% of
seconds,
that.
2019 budget is?
It's an election budget, and I give it a 5 out of 10.
David.
Election budget, not what South Africa really needs at this point.
Munia.
It's a consolidation budget. It's just consolidated, and it's almost a non-tax event.
Okay, and my comment, it's a PR budget. That's it from the tax panel. My thanks to Marcus Botha from BDO, Senior Tax Lecturer at University of Johannesburg, Munia Hassan, and David Warneke from SAICA's National Tax Committee. After the break, Natasha hones in on the political implications from today's budget. Do stay with us.
The Budget Day was brought to you by SAICA. We believe that to add value to a nation is to add value to its people. We collaborate with all stakeholders to drive our nation's development agenda.